You know those kinds of places that, to anyone just driving by, look like nothing more than a pretty, prosperous farm? The kind of land where the corn grows so golden it almost shines under the sun, where the smell of damp earth rides the wind, and anyone passing by thinks, now this is the land of lucky folks. Yeah, what nobody knows is that there's a reason why that corn grows so beautiful. And I swear to you, if folks knew, not a single soul, not a single damn soul, would dare even roll their tires through that front gate. Listen closely. This story I'm about to tell you, you won't find it in books, not in newspapers, not even whispered at the corner table of the town's diner. It's the kind of story that only those who were born there, those who lived it, know. And even those folks, most of them, pretend they forgot, or choose not to speak, out of fear, out of respect, or maybe, just maybe, so they don't wake up what should have never been woken. The name of the place is known around here, Flat Rock Farm, right off a back road cutting through the middle of Oklahoma, somewhere between Chandler and Davenport. And if you drive by, and believe me, plenty of folks do, it looks like the most normal thing in the world. But today I want to talk to you about what no one could see, but was happening in that place. Before that, just make sure you're already subscribed to the channel, because we're bringing stories like this every week. Now back to the Lisa Stone, a beautiful farm. Well kept. Rows of corn so straight, so perfect, they vanish into the horizon. Bright green pastures, a crisp white painted barn, a big farmhouse with a shiny wooden porch, fresh fences, polished wood. There are even folks who stop to take pictures, because to anyone who doesn't know, it looks like a little slice of heaven carved right into the Oklahoma plains. But those who live there, those who grew up walking that dirt, they know there's something behind all that green. They know that sweet smell of corn that fills the air sometimes hides another smell, the smell of something dead, the smell of dirt, but not from rain. No, from something that the earth itself swallowed. I know, because I grew up there, because I saw it, because I lived it. And if I'm telling this story now, it ain't to scare nobody. It's to make sure it's written down. Because folks who forget risk being reminded. Flat Rock Farm has always been the pride of the region. Good land, strong corn, a harvest that never fails. And the strange thing is, even during the worst droughts, when everything around would wither and die, when the neighbors' fields rotted right on the stalk, Flat Rock stayed untouched, unaffected, alive. That corn, it was different. The leaves whiter, the ears heavier, fuller. The green, so intense, it almost hurt your eyes. Too pretty, way too pretty. And that's exactly what folks couldn't understand. It didn't even seem like a hard farm to work, you know? It sat right off the road. Easy access. People passed by every day, saw the pretty corn, saw the trucks hauling load after load, and thought, man, look at that. Lucky's the man who owns this land. But the folks living there, the folks carrying that family name, they knew that green came with a price. They knew that sometimes, in the dead of night, the wind would change, the sound of it different, and the corn, it would sway, without any wind. And out there, in the middle of those rows, there was something that no one should ever try to find. And standing at the head of it all was him, Norbert, a man whose gaze was drier than a fence post. Hard, closed off, ambitious down to the bone. Norbert was the kind of man who believed with every fiber of his soul that everything had a price. The land, the rain, the sun, life. And sooner or later, folks who believe everything can be bought end up finding someone willing to sell. And that is exactly where it all began. It was one of those days folks around here call a bad day. You know, that kind of morning where the sky hangs low, heavy, swollen, like it's gonna pour any second, but it never does. The air thick, sticky, too dense to breathe right. The kind of air that weighs on your chest, that carries the smell of something old, something forgotten, something that should never be disturbed. And that's when he showed up, out of nowhere, like he'd grown right out of the dirt. Nobody saw where he came from. Nobody saw him walk in. He was just there, leaning on the farm gate, like he'd always been there, wearing a wide-brim hat torn along the edges. Clothes, ragged, dusty, stained, covered in bits of straw. and time. Slung over one shoulder, a burlap sack, heavy, so heavy it creaked with every move, like it was full of rocks or bones. But what really froze your blood was the smile. Thin, crooked, tight-lipped, a smile of someone who knows more than he should, someone who carries secrets no man ought to carry. He called himself a root doctor, said he knew the ways of the land, said he knew how to make the harvest come back, even when the ground refused to give birth. And Norbert was at his breaking point. The drought had split the earth open. Corn stalks turning yellow right there on the stem. Leaves curling, like they were just tired of living. Norbert, he wasn't the kind of man who accepted losing. Not to God, not to the devil, not to the land, not to anything. And that's why they sat down together on the porch of the big house, facing the cornfield that was slowly dying. They talked, low, quiet, for hours. Nobody knows exactly what was said, but folks nearby, they swear on everything holy that they saw it, saw Norbert slam his hand on the table, saw him break into a cold sweat like nobody had ever seen on that man. And by the time the talking was done, he'd agreed. He'd shaken hands with whatever that thing was. The stranger asked for 3 things. Simple things. At least, that's how it seemed. Stuff nobody working that farm really understood. Not back then. Wood. Good, dry wood. Old burlap. Scraps. Rags. Leftover cloth. Thick thread. The kind they use to stitch leather. And one more thing. A cross. But not just any cross. A specific one. The old, rusted iron cross. The one buried behind the little church on the property. A cross that, according to the oldest folks around, had been pulled, not from a grave, but from something even worse. When someone, nervous, half scared, worked up the nerve to ask, "What's all this for?" the stranger just smiled, wider, slower, dragging every word, like a man chewing glass. To build a guardian. To protect what's yours. But that guardian wasn't going to be made of just straw. Not just wood. Not just cloth. It was going to be made of life. Of things that should have never been there. Of pieces that should never have been stitched together. And just like that, the deal was done. If you ask anyone who was around back then, no one could ever forget that day. Not the ones who were there. Not the ones who just heard about it. Not even the ones who pretended not to see. But to this day, they still wake up in the middle of the night, soaked in cold sweat, with the smell of damp straw, and of something dead, stuck in their noses. The work started before the sun was even up. The sky, still gray, heavy, stained, like it was carrying a kind of fog, but not the kind that comes from weather. No, this was something that came from the land itself. Something that moved, but had no name. The stranger gave the orders. Low, firm, steady, never raised his voice. Didn't have to. Nobody dared disobey. Not even Norbert, a man who had never, not once, lowered his head to anyone. They went to fetch the wood from the old barn. But not just any wood. It had to be old, dry, half-rotted, the kind of wood that snaps underfoot, that spits out splinters like thorns, and smells of mold, of damp, of something rotten that's been rotting for far too long. Then they gathered burlap, rags, scraps of fabric, stuff that had been forgotten in the corners of the barn for years. Filthy, stained with grease, with sweat, and God knows what else. Some pieces torn, others stained with rust, or something that looked a whole lot like something worse. And then, it started, what should never have started. The stranger walked right into the middle of the cornfield, the dead center, the heart of the farm. That place where the wind didn't blow, where the sound of the world just died, where even the light itself seemed sick, faded, weak, wrong. There, they drove the main post into the ground, a chunk of twisted oak, dry, cracked from top to bottom. Across it, they fixed another beam, forming a cross, but not a cross of faith. No, it was a warning, a threat. They bound it together with thick rope, black with filth, so filthy, so twisted, it looked almost alive. And then, they started filling it. First, straw. Then, pieces. Pieces of things that should have never been there. Folks who were close swear to this day they saw it. They saw the stranger reach into that burlap sack and pull out something. Something that wasn't right. A strip of leather that looked a whole lot like skin. A sliver of bone, thin, curved. Maybe a rib from some animal. Or maybe from something worse. A tooth, small, yellow, fell right into the straw. No one had the guts to pick it up. The head was made from an old burlap sack, torn, stained, filthy, splotched in colors of rust, mud, dirt, and something that looked a whole lot like dried blood. They stitched it by hand, with thick, heavy-duty thread, the kind used for leatherwork. Each stitch, each pull of the thread, looked like it pulsed, like it throbbed, as if the string itself had veins. The mouth was a slash, a rip, torn too far to one side. A grin that wasn't a grin. A wound, a scar, a tear that would never heal. And the eyes, God, the eyes. Two big buttons, black, cracked, so deep, so dark, that anyone who stared too long, swore they could see something moving, in the depths, as if that emptiness was looking back, like a mirror, but not a mirror for your face, a mirror for what you carry inside, for the things you don't want to see, for the things you pretend aren't there. In its chest, they hammered the rusted iron cross, the very same one that had been buried behind the old church for more than 30 years. But they didn't place it straight. No, they drove it upside down, around the trunk. They tied branches of dead figure, strips of red cloth, black crow feathers, and strands of hair that nobody dared ask whose it was. The smell, God, the smell was impossible to ignore. The stink of damp straw, mixed with something dead, with something old, with something that should have never been dug up, never been touched, never been woken. When they were done, the stranger just stood there, still, silent, watching, smiling, the way someone smiles at a masterpiece, or at a fresh grave. And Norbert, without saying a word, walked over to the front porch, nailed a sign to the wood. Big letters, scribbled in charcoal, rough, crooked. The harvest is sacred. The guardian watches. And right then, that's when it started. The miracle, or the curse. The corn, that had been turning yellow, dying right there on the stalk, started to grow. Grow like nobody had ever seen before. Green, thick, fat, heavy, too pretty, way too pretty. But you know, friend, in this life, nothing comes for free. And that guardian wasn't built just to scare off birds. The price, oh, the price never waits long. The corn, it grew like never before. So green, so full, so heavy, that even folks driving by would slow down, stare, comment, maybe even feel a bit jealous. But those who lived there, the ones who knew that land, they knew that wasn't natural. They knew that silence, that dead, heavy air, that strange smell, that sometimes rolled in near sundown. It wasn't from God. And when the first ears of corn started to fatten up, that's when the land came to collect. It was a Wednesday morning. The sun hadn't even fully risen. That kind of gray, weak light, the kind that can't decide if it's gonna burn through or just roll back into rain. And it was right there, in that in-between, that he was gone. Zeke Harper. Good man, hard worker, easy smile, the kind of man everybody liked, always whistling, always laughing, always playing with the kids around the farm, and always handing out those little honey candies, wrapped in paper, all soft, all greasy from being in his pocket too long. Zeke was born on that land, but even that didn't save him. That morning, he left early, like always, wearing his old straw hat, frayed at the edges, machete on his hip, and the leather string around his neck, a gift from his mama. Said he never took it off, not ever, and he walked straight into the cornfield, to check the crops, to do his job, to care for the land. Zeke never came back. Nobody heard a scream. Nobody heard footsteps. Nobody heard anything. Just silence. A silence that felt thicker, heavier, wrong. When folks realized Zeke wasn't anywhere, they started looking, calling his name, checking the barn, the pasture, the edges of the cornfield, until they found it. Not him. No. They found his machete, buried, slammed deep, into the fence post, at the entrance to the cornfield. So deep, it couldn't have been put there by a man. No. It felt like something stronger, like something had left a message. And right there, next to the machete, his leather string, the same one he always wore around his neck, lying in the dirt, torn, filthy, stained with something dark, almost black, dry, not mud, not clay, not anything natural. And that was it. No footprints, no drag marks, no sign of a struggle, nothing, just the corn, swaying, without any wind. And that's when I felt it. I swear on everything sacred. That night, lying in my bed, listening to that awful silence. That silence that felt like a scream, choked down and stuck in the throat of the night. I heard it. I heard straw dragging across the porch, straw scraping wood, creaking, groaning, shifting, like something light, but somehow massive, was walking right there. I shook all over, from my toes to the top of my head, pulled the blanket up to my chest, held my breath, froze, and I looked through the crack in the window, out into the black, that black so dark, not even the moon dared to shine, and I saw it, a shadow, tall, thin, gaunt, arms too long, too crooked, swaying, like something that didn't quite know how to walk, but walking, all the same, coming from between the corn, from inside the field. But worse than seeing the shadow, was seeing the guardian. He was there, still, in the same spot, but different. The head that always hung, tilted to one side, now was raised, higher, straighter, and I swear on everything that still has breath. I saw it. That stitched-on smile was bigger, wider, ripped, split open, satisfied, like it had eaten, like it had just been fed, like it had a new piece to hold itself together. And the wind that hadn't blown in days, it blew, but not to move the leaves. No, it blew to bring me the smell of straw, of wet dirt, of something old, of something rotting, of something dead. When Zeke vanished, the whole farm went quiet. Not the kind of quiet you get on a calm day. No, it was the kind of quiet of something waiting for the next one. Because deep down, everybody knew the guardian wasn't going to stop there. And the first one to have the guts to speak it out loud was her, Miss Elzira, midwife, healer, a woman whose rough hands had carried the weight of dozens of births and dozens of funerals, old but not weak, small in size, but huge in presence. Her voice, gravelly, rough, half-sung, the kind of voice that made any kid freeze in place the second they heard it. But even the strongest have their limits. She stood there, on her front porch, facing the yard, staring straight at the cornfield, now greener, fuller, fatter than ever, spat on the dirt, and said, that corn ain't right. That corn ain't from God. People heard her, told her to hush, said it was just crazy talk, old woman superstition. She was getting senile. But the ones saying it wouldn't meet her eyes, because they knew, they damn well knew, that she knew. And after that, she started to change. Her eyes, darker, deeper. Her skin, once baked by the sun, now pale, grayish. Her hands trembled every time she sprinkled holy water on the doorway. Every time she burned sage, prayed, blessed the house, over and over and over. And then, things started happening. Miss Elzira said she saw them, dead kids, playing in the barnyard. Kids nobody knew, kids who had never been there. But now, they ran, they laughed, they hid, and every time she tried to get close, they vanished. She said, she heard it, heard prayers, strange, twisted prayers, prayers, spoken backwards, crawling out from the cornfield. And then came the knocking. 3 knocks, always 3, same rhythm every time. Knock, knock, knock. She'd open the door, and there was nothing, just the wind, or what she thought was the wind. But the worst was when she saw it, in her room, middle of the night, woke up to something, standing, in the corner, in the dark, tall, still, crooked, wrong, like the darkness itself had decided to take form, like the shadow had gotten tired of just being a shadow, and now it was staring back, and then it vanished, gone, like it had never been there. That same week, Miss Elzira disappeared. No scream, no footsteps, no sound, nothing, just silence, but not the absence of sound. No, this was the presence of something. When folks went to her house, the door was wide open, half off its hinges, swaying, creaking, in the wind. The kettle, still on the stove, burnt dry, long since boiled away. The dish towel, on the floor. The rosary, snapped, scattered, across the doorway. Some beads, charred, burned, like they'd passed through fire. But of Miss Elzira, nothing, not a thing, not a footprint, not a shadow, not a trace, except at the edge of the cornfield, right there, at the guardian's feet, in the one spot where its shadow seemed darker than darkness itself. There it was, a piece of her satin ribbon, the same one she always wore, that faded red ribbon, the one she said her mama gave her, and that she never, ever took off. But now it was lying in the dirt, torn, burned at the edges, stained with something dark, something almost black, not mud, not dirt, no, it was something else. And that's when folks looked at the guardian, and they knew, they all knew, it was different, bigger, fuller, standing taller, the stitches tighter, so tight, they looked like they might split open, its chest, swollen, bulging, like something inside, was breathing, was pulsing, was alive, and the smile, that terrible smile, stitched onto its face, was wider, ripped farther, torn open, like the fabric itself couldn't hold back whatever was trying to crawl out from inside. And the eyes, those black, cracked buttons, looked deeper, wetter, more alive. And the corn, oh the corn, it grew like never before, greener, taller, stronger, heavier, hungrier. And the guardian, it smiled, not out of joy, but out of hunger. And those who still had sense started to understand. The land was harvesting a whole lot more than just corn. Miss Elzira's disappearance wasn't just another one. No, it was a message. Clear, direct, brutal, undeniable. From that day on, Flat Rock Farm stopped pretending to be anything other than what it really was. Because before that, there were still folks fooling themselves, clinging to the hope that maybe all of this was just coincidence. But that hope died right along with her. The land though, oh no, the land didn't die. The land was more alive than ever, and hungrier. After Elzira, it didn't take long. One by one, they started to disappear. Farmhands, children, women, even animals, gone. Just like that. No screams, no footprints, no trails, no signs. Sometimes, you wouldn't even know exactly who was missing. You'd only notice by what was left. An empty bed, a saddle still hanging on the fence, a hoe leaning where someone had just walked away in the middle of working and never came back, and always by the sound, or rather, the lack of it, because the silence of Flat Rock Farm wasn't the silence of emptiness. It was the silence of something waiting, the silence of something, holding its breath, ready to pounce on the next. And with every single one that vanished, the guardian changed. You could see it. You could damn well see it. Even if you tried to pretend otherwise. It got bigger, fuller, more swollen, more alive. The stitches, once loose, now stretched, tight, so tight that the fabric started to split at the seams, like whatever was inside was growing, expanding, stretching, trying to get out. Sometimes, folks walking near the corn swore they heard it, breathing, low, heavy, hot, coming from inside the guardian. Others said that in the middle of the night, they saw the straw twitch, move, all on its own, twisting, shifting, adjusting, like it was making itself comfortable, growing, stretching, rebuilding itself. And every time, every single time, the corn got prettier, more golden, heavier, fatter, perfect, too perfect, sickeningly perfect. The ears of corn, so big, they bent the stalks, the kernels, so full, they looked like they might burst. The entire field, so green, but not the kind of green you see on any normal farm. No, it was a sick green, a green that didn't belong to this world, a green that seemed to spit out life and death at the same time. And Norbert was thriving, the best harvest the region had ever seen, more money than he'd ever dreamed of, laughing, counting, filling his pockets, filling the silos, filling the trucks. But the price wasn't just corn, wasn't just money. The price was the soul of the land and the souls of anyone living on it, because the land was done with corn. The land wanted flesh, wanted bone, wanted life. And right in the middle of it all, when the entire farm was breathing fear, the stranger vanished. Just like that, the same way he came. He was gone. No tracks, no footprints, no name. But he left something, a mirror, small, old, with a cracked wooden frame, left right there, in the middle of the front porch. And whoever had the guts to look into that mirror regretted it, because it didn't just show your face. No, it showed what was beneath the ground. Something that shifted, that pulsed, that breathed, right there, under the skin of the farm. And then, the price became clear. Clear, like looking straight into your own end, and knowing there's not a damn thing you can do about it. No matter how long he tried to ignore it, no matter how much money he counted, no matter how many truckloads of corn he sold, Norbert knew. Deep down, he always knew that what he'd planted wasn't just corn. Knew that deal never had an end clause. And he knew that one day, the bill was coming. And it came, slow, heavy, crawling, like a shadow that sticks to the corners of walls, slips through cracks, sneaks under doors, creeps up through the floorboards, and never, ever leaves. In those last weeks, Norbert wasn't the same man anymore. His face, once dry, hard, closed off. Now, it was corroded, pale, sunken, dead-looking. His eyes, lost. The eyes of someone who no longer knows if he's awake or still trapped inside a nightmare. That arrogant smile, the one he always wore, was gone. Gone, along with his courage. Gone, with his faith. Gone, with whatever little shred of humanity he still had left. Because now, the farm itself was breathing. It was watching. It was waiting. By day, it was the cornfield. The rows, tighter, thicker than ever. Nobody who walked in ever came out. The leaves, wider. The stalks, thicker. The shadows inside, darker than any night. By night, it was the guardian. And it wasn't just standing still anymore. It moved, not walking, not running, sliding, like the wind itself was dragging it. And those who dared to peek through their windows, they swear to this day, that they saw it. Him, the guardian, standing there, at the front gate of the homestead, staring, right at Norbert's house. And it didn't have that tilted, lazy head, like a scarecrow anymore. No, the head was raised, the chest puffed, the stitches trembling, like something inside was breathing. And that smile, that stitched-on smile, was bigger, wider, split, torn, starving. That's when Norbert broke. He lost the fight, lost his mind, lost everything. He tried to fight back, tried to do what any man would do. When he realizes the very demon he built is now knocking at his front door. He ordered them to burn the cornfield, gasoline, used oil, torches, light it all, he said. And as the sun went down, they lit the fire. But the fire wouldn't catch. The flames flickered, then died, flickered, then died, like the air itself refused to feed it, like the land itself swallowed the flames. They tried with axes, steel, against the guardian's frame, but the blades snapped, or worse, they bounced back. Anyone who raised an axe felt the blow ricochet, hit, like they were swinging at themselves, hands cut, arms bleeding, flesh torn, blood dripping into dirt that seemed to drink it. And the guardian, it stood there, still, staring, grinning, satisfied, until that last morning, the last time anyone ever saw Norbert. The sun had barely cracked the sky. A heavy fog crawled low across the pasture. The air, thick, heavy, dense, hard to breathe. The smell of damp straw, of something old, of something dead. Norbert opened the door to the big house, alone, didn't say a word, didn't look back. He walked, step by step, slow, dragging his boots through the dirt, heading to the cornfield. And folks who saw it swear to this day, the cornfield opened like a mouth, like a womb, like a grave. It took him in, and it closed, sealed, shut, like no one had ever walked through it. Norbert was never seen again, never, not a piece, not a footprint, not even the mark of his boot sole. But that day, the ones who had the guts to looked at the guardian, and they saw it was different, bigger, fuller, swollen, heavier. The fabric could barely hold it, the stitches trembling, quivering, the chest rising, falling, like it was breathing, like it had just eaten. And the smile split, wide, ripped, ear to ear, satisfied. After Norbert, that farm was never just a farm again. Because right there, in that soil, in that land, that to any outsider looked normal, looked fertile, looked prosperous, there was something that breathes, something that feeds, something that now is awake. The very first thing you start to notice is the silence, but not any silence. A silence that's full, thick, heavy, like smoke, cold, like a stone, soaked through in the dead middle of the night. On that farm, the wind doesn't whistle. No, the wind whispers. And anyone who's ever set foot on that dirt knows that sometimes when you think you're alone, you're not. Because the land, it speaks, it breathes, it watches, it waits. And me, I'm here. I've always been here, and I'll always be here. My name doesn't matter anymore. My story has no owner now, because I'm not human anymore. I'm part of it, part of this, part of here. My body, if you can even call it that, was harvested, sown, fused, crushed into the machinery of this curse. Today, I walk these lands like a shadow, like a whisper, like something that never sleeps. I don't grow old. I don't get sick. I don't die. At least, not the way you understand death. Because when the land decides that you are hers, you don't leave. Not ever. And at night, oh the night, I still feel it. The smell of damp straw. of wet dirt, but not from rain. The smell of something old, something rotting just beneath the surface, something that should have never been there. And when the wind shifts, when it blows from the wrong direction, I hear it. I hear the whispers from inside the cornfield, from inside the earth, from inside the guardian. And deep down, when I look from far away through the mist that rises from the pasture, when the moon is nothing more than a crooked scar in the sky, I see him. I see the guardian standing there, arms wide open, head sometimes tilted, sometimes lifted, watching, searching, waiting, always smiling. That stitched-on smile, not of joy, but of hunger. Because as long as there is corn growing on Flat Rock Farm, as long as there are folks driving by without knowing, as long as there is life, there will be blood, there will be flesh, there will be bones, to keep the land alive. And anyone who thinks they can plant without paying learns the hard way. The harvest is sacred. The guardian watches. That was today's story. If you made it this far, let me know what you thought in the comments. Also, tell me if you've ever heard of anything similar happening near where you live. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. There are plenty more chilling stories coming your way. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.